Okay, good morning. I'm Nancy McSherry Jensen. I'm here with Sarah Denwald, my business partner. We run the Swing Shift, and we have our Thursday morning Hangout habits. These are virtual online programs that let you get into the habit of working on your job search. So we drop them every Thursday morning at 10 a.m. Pacific with relevant job search strategy topics. We want to give you heads up on a couple of things coming up. We have a book and an e-course coming out. Please go to backtobusiness.com. Pre-orders are ready. This will walk you through the entire discernment to interview prep process for when you're looking to get back into the workforce or switch roles or careers. We have an interview workshop that is live, and it is with women's career advocate Chelsea Cooper. It is coming up on December 2nd. If interview prep is something that you want to work on, Chelsea is an incredible resource. So make sure to go and sign up for that. I am sure it will fill up very quickly. And we are running an accountability program. This is our third program, our third cohort. It will be kicking off in January. Research shows that when you are accountable to another person, you are 95% certain that you will achieve those goals. So we have small groups with discrete tasks. So take a look at that to sign up. But today, I am delighted to welcome Cherylynne Crowther. She and her partner Dave are going to talk about looking good on camera. She's the founder and principal at StorySeller Media, and she's also the marketing communications director at TEDx Seattle. Cherylynne has a wonderful background. She's an Emmy Award-winning producer and marketer, and she's led creative teams as the vice president and executive producer at NBC affiliates, at msnbc.com, and at Edelman Public Relations. She's launched multiple marketing campaigns, including the highly successful Get Jesse Consumer Advocate franchise, the Yellow Jackets branding program, and the innovative microsite Hot Snow, which promoted the Salt Lake City Winter Olympics. She now serves, as I mentioned, as the founder of StorySeller Media, and her responsibilities range from managing the organization's website, social channels, and media relations, communications, design, print, and ticketing for TEDx Seattle. So she's got a big set of responsibilities. So she's going to walk us through a session on looking good on camera with her husband, her partner, Dave. We want to talk quickly. So I'm going to stop sharing so we can just talk directly with Cherylynne and with Dave. Welcome. I want to talk a little bit about the importance of looking good on camera right now. Pre-pandemic, about 60% of businesses used video conferences. And of course, that has boomed in the last 8 months. I looked up a data point this morning. On average, Zoom sees about 200 million daily meeting participants today. Yes, that's huge. And as a point of comparison, in December 2019, it was about 10 million. So that is a 200x multiple. Why is it so important to look good on camera? I mean, we've all seen the do's and don'ts, but Cherylynne, at a top level, can you talk about why that's important?
I'd say the top level is really about human communication. So while it's look good, and I did in fact put on makeup this morning, which was probably the first time in many, many months, I am wearing sweatpants. I'll fess up to that right away. But that's inconsequential to me being able to connect with you this morning and with the folks that are looking at how can they present themselves well. So it's really about human connection. We don't Zoom, we see people, right? So that's the element that we really want to look at. And even that 60% stats of video conferencing prior, I think a lot of that video conferencing was probably sitting in a conference room. My experience had been when I was working at MSNBC and working with the NBC News teams that we would be video conferencing in Redmond, and we would be talking to people in another conference room in New York. Very different setup than where we are now. And also set up by AV professionals, so really set up to look better. Maybe not great, but it's like you took the whole room in.
Right. And so many of us are, I actually have a home office, but many of us are perched on the top of the stairs.
Yeah.
carving out little office spaces at home. So I think it's very important. This is going to be going on for the next while. I
This is
want
the
to
future. This is the
This is the
future.
future, right? I just read a data point this morning that 75% of CEOs anticipate that these meetings will continue even after the pandemic passes, because they see so many productivity gains and, of course, then other cost savings. I want to throw out a couple of other data points that I think are really interesting. The average daily video conference is between 31 and 60 minutes, even though they may feel like they go on all day. And 3/4 of them are really only between 2 and 4 people. So keeping those things in mind, what's the best way to optimize yourself for those kinds of meetings?
Well, my suggestion would be, and what I do for any of the meetings I do, is that you have your one setup. You understand what your go-to setup is. And while I'm sitting in a physical space, I'm going to reveal a little secret. Dave is actually sitting in a green screen world. And it's not a green screen that is a Zoom background. It's more about, he's actually got a fully lit green screen background. Dave is a AV professional.
Right.
And so just being able to pull those elements together. I think what's critically important is really one of this is the primary is about being able to make eye contact, to be able to look at the camera and feel comfortable, but also be able to look around a little bit so that you're not having to like really and passionately talk to off camera. That we're not really going to see your nose, that we're not going to see your ceiling. I'm not even going to demo it right now. And even with a two-person, especially for your audience, a two-person meeting, that's a job interview. Or it's a really important networking piece, and making sure that you look good without being, I should say, making sure that you are comfortable and you're feeling comfortable in how you look on camera. That's a lot of what's so critically important here.
Got to unmute myself. Right. That's really true. Can you talk a little bit about best practices pre-call, during the call, and post-call, and then we'll get to the action?
Well, pre-call is identify where you're going to be. And we've worked with people in terms of even like how can they set up in a car, because sometimes even though we're not moving as much, we are doing some getting around and around. So identify where you could be. I immediately flashed to mind of someone saying that she'd finally done her meeting in the bathroom and with the kid hammering on the door and all that. I think maybe that we'd heard that from one of your meetings. And just that whole idea of it's like, okay, I'm going to be in this space, and this is where I'm going to be able to converse. And then think about some of the things of like, what is your lighting? What is your eye height so that you can look comfortable? And what is your, how are you going to be heard and how are you going to hear? So to find whatever setup works that best. You can go high end, you can go and buy equipment. Part of it is just that if you're comfortable, that's important. During the call, during the call, some of the regular Zoom pieces or Zoom or whatever it might be, remember your mute, your unmute, those types of things. I recommend hide self view. So you can find the little hide self view, because I think we're like, what is it, crows or whatever, it's like we're just drawn to look at ourselves. And so it's really easy if you hide self view, then you don't look at yourself as much, and you don't start to get anxious, because none of us ever have conversations in a mirror with another person, right? So that's one of the things. And then post call, it's like, okay, relax, and if you feel like there was something that didn't quite work the way you wanted it to, kind of make a note of it. And that's in terms of the actual what's the comfort. Of course, it also depends on what the call is about.
Right. And one thing that Sarah talks about a lot is making sure your technology works before you get into this, right? Because there's there's one technology that everybody defaults to, and then we have a range of calls because of our business partnerships. And I don't know how many times I've gone to get ready for the call and thought, oh shoot, this is Ring Central, it's GoToMeeting, it's WebEx, it's MS Teams. What is it exactly? And so we found that 15 minutes before your call, double check and make sure that, make sure you've got your technology installed, because some of them want to install on your
Downloads, right.
laptop. There's downloads. Maybe it has to have a restart. So that's the one thing I would add. Enough of me talking. We want to see you and Dave do this in action. So Dave and Cherylynne are going to demonstrate the good and the maybe needs to improve versions of video conferencing.
Well, I'm gonna ask Dave to basically undress. Don't worry.
It's a family show.
Yeah. I'm gonna have Dave basically dissemble his look and show you how every element is important. So Dave, if you want to just start a few things. One thing I will, as he's kind of working through it, is maybe try lights. Dave, is that what you want to look at or check first in terms of?
Right. Well, let me just sort of explain where I'm starting here, just so you get an idea of how I arrived at this. We're dealing today with a virtual background, which is a green screen. Here's a green book, and it's invisible, and I can be Invisible Man. And so a green screen is technology like the weatherman who's not in front of a large state of Montana, that through the technology, it grabs that color and replaces it with something else. And so this is a replacement, I think, from something from the BBC. There's a whole set of backgrounds that BBC has released. And you can like Absolutely Fabulous and all sorts of other things, Doctor Who, whatever you want to do. You can make your own background as well if you want to. I just wanted to do that today as just sort of an example of another type of background of in these times that we're in, where we have two high schoolers, everyone's on various online things. We are sort of all squeezed out of our regular spaces for offices and desks and everything else. And so this was just a way to make that happen. So this is just one way to sort of hide things that way. And I've also then done a fair amount of lighting here today. We all find ourselves on these online things, and in the video world, we're all video producers. We're all grips, which is a term for in the trade for working with lighting and making things look right and whatnot. And it's easy for people to think like, well, okay, I need a light, so okay, I bought this light here, and so I'm going to turn it on. And how does that work? And yeah, how's that? Looks pretty good, right? That's pretty decent. And well, it's a horror story or whatever else. And there's some grace to it that you want to deal with that makes you look better. And the softness of the light is really nice. I have right now in front of me, I have what we call the key light, or my main light over here. I got a fill light over here. I got two background lights hitting the green screen, and I have a rim light. If I look back, my shiny bald head will get shinier and more bald.
So I have a question for you, Dave. So for
Please.
most people who are at home are not AV professionals.
This is insane.
Right, insane. It's totally insane. So what, and if you've really gone high end, maybe you've invested in a ring light. How do you replicate this in an at-home environment?
Okay, are you speaking from using a green screen or just basic lighting? I'm sort of going to peel back the layers.
Both.
Well, and one thing I'll just also say too is that Dave is actually using a physical green screen, which you saw when he did the thing. So as compared to the Zoom offer of a green screen, the thing you won't notice is because it is lit, he doesn't have that kind of funny waviness.
I see that.
And then there's the basics of don't silhouette. I mean, some of these are the DIY you might find on YouTube, but it's don't silhouette. So make sure you don't have the window behind you. I would recommend don't have an open door behind you. And one of the reasons is because I've seen that enough times where I realize that when you have an open door behind you, I am uncomfortable. I don't feel like you're present. And that's part of this look good, is part of this like sense of presence that we want you to have. So sometimes it could be just turning your camera just a little bit, or your laptop just a little bit to find the corner or find a space where you're in that space. And Dave will say that one of the first things on a ring light is it's a challenge if you have glasses to use a ring light, because it does reflect directly right. Yeah, exactly. I'll actually also just tell you one secret that I have found to be really helpful. Is jumping a little bit. These are the glasses I wear in real life. and everything just got a little bit fuzzy because I am keeping just enough distance from the screen so that I can actually take it all in, and I'm not quite like this, you know, because I don't want to get too close to people. So I invested, and it wasn't that much at Costco, in a work pair of glasses, and so I make a point of wearing these. And Dave, I'll let Dave get back to the lights just a little bit. If you want to just touch on it quickly, Dave, in terms of what are the things people can do at home.
Sure. So just to reveal the magic here, here's what's behind me. Pretty sexy, right? And you know, we can have Che Guevara here. We can do the I think that was one of the other BBC shows, whatever. But there's all sorts of options that way that you can work with in terms of background image.
I do. I want to jump on real quick, Dave. I do like the idea of having a background image, especially because we talk about personal branding, and there's subtleness that, you know, you can display, right, with your personality or your industry, that the interviewee can draw that out of. But it's important that it's not distracting with the fuzzy going in and out, like with some of the virtual backgrounds that there are. That's what I never. Correct.
And so the trick to that is decent lighting, and the cameras love light. They love light, and that's what makes them purr. And let's sort of do a deconstruct here, and I'm going to start turning off some lights. And let's see here. So I'm going to turn off. So those are my front lights off. So I just got a room light here in the background, and I can turn off another light or so. Things start getting kind of funky with the green screen, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's sort of how things fall apart.
So if you have invested in the ring light, and if you do have glasses, there's two elements of it that I would highly recommend. Get your laptop up as high as you can, and really, so you're almost feels like you're looking up at someone. You know, imagine that the laptop is kind of your taller person in your world, and you're just looking up a little bit, because that's going to help. And then, as Dave has shown, you can have a direct light, but if you have maybe the ring light, or maybe you have a practical, maybe you have a light that's somewhere in your house, that
table lamp or something. Yeah.
And that could be kind of in front of you, which is brings some of that softer light in. And then the ring light, because it's the key light, and I have a very similar setup than to Dave. I've got a bright light way up high, so ideally it doesn't cause too much stuff here. I've got a ring light over here to my left, and just the difference between having that and not having it. So just having that side light, that makes a difference. Now, I am next to a window, which for the lighting expert I live with makes him crazy, because we never know what this light's going to be like. So windows are actually something you have to almost be really careful with. If you can sit in front of a window as your kind of primary source, that's good, unless it's not. And that only is, I would say the best thing you could do is you could sit in front of a window, because especially in our Seattle skies, you just don't know what you're going to have. And while we're going to have gray for a while, you know, in July, I could have had bright sun coming in here so much that I would have needed to drop the lights. So those are a couple of things. And Dave, what do you look for? You kind of look to create shadows in a certain way, right? I mean, when you build out lighting.
Yeah, I mean, so there's the world of what we call 3-point lighting, which is 3 lights typically. And if you want to go that far, and it doesn't have to be necessarily like a studio set or a film set, but you want to have your key light or your main light, which is what I have up here.
Kind of in front.
I have a fill light over here that I can turn off, or I can turn on. To sort of.
Phil is standing next to you. So just your buddy Phil, bringing some light.
Got it.
Wingman Phil. And then I've got a little bit of a rim light too, just on the background there.
And that's basically just
a little bit on my shoulders, and just sort of separates from the background. Just gives a little contour and dimension to me that I wouldn't otherwise have. And so that's, please.
Oh yeah, I was going to say, so because again, you're professionals, right? That this is what you do for noobs like me. You've said to, experiment, I think, with, get your lamps at home. I think I still have a clip lamp from when I was in college.
Right.
And, I've used that momentarily. Tell me a little bit, stepping back from the tactical parts of this, why is this important?
It's really to make sure that you present as naturally as possible. Right. What happened, back in March, Dave and I, everybody's watching the news constantly, way more than even I did. I worked in TV news and then I kind of stepped away from it. And watching my former colleagues and others work from home and it was absurd how bad they looked. I mean, these are people who work with audio, video all the time. They work with professionals all the time. And they didn't seem to understand how to position the camera. Sometimes you see the camera being your laptop, you see it and you're up against a wall, or, you see this. I don't hang art on my ceiling. I just don't. I haven't. I don't plan to. So just bringing it back down, or you'd see this so much, it's people, I remember, women saying, oh, how do I get rid of the double chin? It's like, well, it is who
Put
you
your
are.
Laptop up a little higher.
And see, I mean, actually that does. And that also gives me a little bit more. I might actually recommend you move that a little bit to catch one of those two corners, just to give a little bit more depth.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Right. And then Sarah, if you had one more light that was, let's see, I guess that's your right, coming in on your right. And then I have to admit, I haven't gotten, in terms of, I've got all the lighting, part of it is because I'm sleeping with a light guy. But another part of it is, I don't have the audio setup that I want. I use this because I do have it in bud. I also have my microphone kind of resting on my collarbone, which actually helps with some of the sound quality. I don't really want to see things out of my ears. The AirPods are okay. Dave is actually, if you want to turn your...
I'm using just a little single pod today that has the mic and the speaker in it, which is nice just from the standpoint there within the technologies of all these online devices for video and stuff like that. One of the things they're always fighting is so that there's not feedback, like when you're in a live event and there's so there's a microphone and there's a speaker, and the two of them want to dance together until they're spinning dervish of sound and high squeaks. And so there's the technology within Zoom and within Teams, with everything else, where as soon as you're done talking, it drops your mic. And then it brings it back up just as it's needed. And that works fine. But if you're not having to use that or having to demand that technology, you're going to get better sound and better audio overall. So it's a good way to go with earbuds or whatever else. And then it really comes down to what is the aesthetic. Are you going to use headset with the mic?
Don't use a gamer headset.
Which is great, but in terms of just the aesthetic of it, is that it's not always the most best lane to be in, I would say.
Great sound, never going to use it on a call.
Right.
Yeah,
it's the Princess Leia look.
Right. Exactly. Right. And so I just chose to use this. This is the first time I'm using it. Actually, it's just trying this out just to sort of put it through its demo. We're sort of a lab here of everything's always changing, and actually, with technology and everything else.
Dave, can I have you just give Sarah a couple more, because you're going to be able to give Sarah more technique than I will in terms of just a couple of, did you turn the light on? Is that right, Sarah?
I did. I turned the light on. It's funny as you're talking, I'm like, I'm with the window. There's all these like, I'm the
light. So what would you recommend there, Dave?
I'm going to look for a box.
What would I recommend there? It has a nice natural look, and I like the window in the background. It's properly exposed. I don't know if different times of the day it might be just blowing out bright, but it looks like you have like a porch or a patio or something there that sort of protects it a little bit, so that's nice. But there might be other times of the day where it's the light's really kicking in there. So it's a little dark maybe in the background perhaps, but there's some mystery back there with the fire, it looks like, and whatnot, which is kind of cool. You know, it's certainly a good start. It's certainly a good start.
It's passable. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
Well,
yeah.
and I think we need her.
The other thing I would work on would be your eye line, because right now you're looking down at your camera. I'm sorry, you're looking down at your monitor, but your audience is your camera. So try just looking at your camera,
Nancy,
where the camera is a little bit, and just so your eye line is in sight that way, just because that it puts credibility. It's I always say it's the used car salesman, sort of the shifty-eyed thing of, you know, looking back and forth, and you know, and business or commerce, you want to be addressing the people you're talking to.
And along that line, any setup you have, whatever it is, whether it's Google Meet or Zoom or anything where the person who's talking that you're looking at is as close to your microphone. So I would recommend speaker view over gallery view anytime. If you're not talking necessarily and you kind of want to see, it's a little bit of a challenge trying to see some of the reactions, but anything that keeps it up a little bit, your image a little bit closer to your camera, is going to make it seem more natural. I do a lot of time spending, I talk to the green light, and which is what you would do in television and broadcast, which is a little bit different. Now, because I'm back a little bit, if I look a little bit, so if I'm looking at Sarah, if I'm looking at Nancy, you might see my eyes shift a little bit, but it shouldn't be so much that you kind of feel like I'm doing this or I'm doing this. That's also one of the reasons why creating a little distance between your image and where your camera is and such, that's also really beneficial.
Yeah. That's what I was just thinking, that I needed to move mine back a little bit, because I do like to see who I'm talking to. Yep. Not necessarily, I can talk to the camera, just remind myself, talk to the camera. But when people are talking to me, I do like to look at them.
Yeah, right,
you know,
right,
sometimes
right.
they're in the bottom square or whatever, but all of these are great. I'm kind of using them right now, and I can already see the difference.
Yeah, and I think go ahead, Dave.
Yeah. No, it's just I've seen an improvement from Sarah. Just your eye line is, you're looking at us now, and so that conversation is more, it's purified somehow or something. You know, we're really talking to each other and looking at each other. So.
Yeah,
the connection.
And I think for many of the people that we work with, you know, informational meetings and interviews, I mean, it's all happening online right now. And as we said at the top, this is going to happen for the foreseeable future. And so it's really important to say, well, how do I present myself? How do I look properly at the camera, on camera? How do, you know, like personally, I like right now, Cherylynne, I'm looking at you in the eye on camera, but I'm not sure that that's how it's reflecting.
Right? No, actually, it does feel like we've got eye contact. It does feel like both of you have gotten your cameras. Isn't that funny though? This is kind of like, okay, my passion about this idea is not that I don't want Photoshop. I don't want us to be human Photoshopped. Right. So like the Zoom improve my appearance thing, bullshit. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I want you to feel like you're in person with this person. You know, so even the part, Sarah, where you were able to do I'm a very hands talker, right? So it's like that ability for me to have enough room where I can kind of communicate. That's what this is about. Looking good is really about communicating effectively. And then the other thing is, this is so going to be the norm, and not even the new norm. 3 years, 5 years from now, we will just standard have the equipment, and it'll probably be in 3 or 4 rooms in our house. So you'll have the place where you can do your gym workout, and you'll be able to do full body and watch your instructor. You'll have the place in the kitchen where you can have the casual conversation with the girlfriends, or the cooking class, or, you know, mom and dad. You're going to have the place in your family room, or in your living room, or in the den, where as a group you can gather and you can have kind of family conversations. I mean, if in an ideal world, we would have had Thanksgiving, and we would have all had, you know, we could go from one room to another. In the same way that we all have big screen most of us have big screen TVs hanging on the wall, which was, well, let's see, I was at King 5 when HD rolled out. That might have been 2007. mean, that was all of 13 years ago. And now we have these, 65, I think, Costco sells 85-inch televisions.
$400. Yeah.
Yes.
So where we're going to be is this equipment is just going to be a given. And we are going to expect to look like this. You can put yourself ahead by really thinking through some of these basics and just assume that this is, I am going to have this set up. And then you can start playing with different setups. Dave can show you the tripod for the phone, Dave.
Sure. I was just going to say, we're sort of at the time right now of when we learned how to write a proper letter and indent the first part and the name and the address and spell sincerely right at the end and indent and all that kind of stuff. And we're kind of doing all that with video now. We're kind of learning how to write that video letter and how to present it correctly so that it looks legit and we seem legit.
Right.
And if it becomes, it's like, well, this person doesn't know how to write, I mean, we equate, we judge them, and
Yeah.
so it's a part of that. It's a part of that, and so we need to learn how to write that video letter so that we can at least fake it or excel at it or something in between. But if we're not even trying, it's not a very good letter. So I think that's sort of the metaphor.
I love the idea of saying this is your video letter.
Right.
Because people,
right.
I think people really, at first, when the pandemic first hit, I think people thought, well, and there was a lot of forgiveness for the at-home setups, but now it's clear that this is here to stay. And so that we all, so could I ask you, and I want to make the best use of our time together. What's a good baseline at-home setup? And do you have a service that you offer to help people get set up with this?
Yes, we are putting together, and that's actually, we're still, okay, well, first of all, let's not get this, because if this is at least the 5th time I pushed that into my ear, so not a good idea to get into this little habit. It's cute for Carol Burnett to grab her earlobe, but this isn't working. When, StorySeller Media is taking on a look good on cam is what we're working on in terms of creating a package. We're looking at packages and we're looking at kind of workshops. It's still early enough that I haven't figured out some of the pricing, but I'd be happy to work with SwingShift in terms of kind of putting a package together for people. And one of the things, again, that I have access to this great AV expert is I can say, okay, well, what's the good equipment list? And we worked with actually a TEDx speaker who had to do her whole presentation from her home. And, Dave mapped out what is the I think it was the cheap, the good, the better, and the best in terms of cameras and microphones and lighting setups. And it's very dynamic. I mean, that's actually getting that equipment list is something it's a process. He's constantly checking equipment because 2 things, there's so much being developed in terms of like the ring lights, the fact that we know ring lights everywhere. Also because of supply lines, things are not all in supply. I mean, we can't buy everything. We can't find stuff. So it's like, that's where
webcams are scarce or they potentially can be. Yeah.
And finding, so your phone camera might be what works well. And then you just have to kind of figure out second monitors can be beneficial. So yes, we are working on putting together different packages where we can do stuff that is kind of the white glove distance service and really set up the home studio so that you come in, you flip the switch, and you're always right on, no matter what the lighting is in situations, you're always really good with stuff.
Right.
And then that's kind of, maybe for presenters, I mean, people who are doing coursework and that kind of stuff, and they are the instructors. And then
people
there's
in
also
remote sales, people in remote sales that need to be able to leave an impression with the person they're trying to sell something to.
Yeah, and I love that. Oh, go ahead.
Well, and then the other part is like the kind of like, here's what you can do with what you've got, because actually people can make a lot of changes. And we worked with someone else. Actually, it's interesting. He's starting a happy couples play together. It's a couples counseling through game play. And he was asking about his home setup, and he had I'll try and make it quick. Basically, he had a really blank, bad wall. You could see the thermostat. There was the door, and it was just like, it gave me the heebie-jeebies to sit there because I just knew I didn't like it. And he had bought some lights that he didn't use quite right. We had him turn his camera just the slightest bit. He had this great corner. He had a built-in bookshelf. He had a high window, clustery window, I think they call it. And then he did a plant and a picture, and it was just magic. And it's like, that was just working with what he had. And so those are some of the other things that we're looking at. We're looking at, if not in December, then maybe in January. I think we're going to be putting together some, like, kick off the new year with a, you look good.
Well, and we would love to get, when it's available, I'd love to get the work with what you've got all the way up to the good, better, best, because I think that we talk to a range of folks, you know, for many people, they just need to figure out how to have a good interview, all the way up to, as you say, people who are doing remote sales or remote business development and need to have a consistent setup. So as I think about our final remarks, what's the one thing you want people to think about when they're thinking about looking good on camera?
Be yourself.
Yeah.
Find your own sort of center. For some people, being in front of a camera, it's root canal, and they're nervous, and it's just, I mean, we've all gotten more accustomed to it, certainly, but be yourself, be your true self, where you can think easily, casually, without feeling like the lights are on and I don't know, what did I just say? You know, I think that's critical.
Yeah, Dave and I have both spent years working to make people comfortable in front of full camera setup. And part of it is from being behind the camera a lot. It's like, ignore the equipment, talk to the human. And I know that's sometimes easier said than done when you've actually got the camera and you've got some of those lights and that's new and you're nervous, but it really is about connect with the person on the other end of the screen. That's what this is about.
Yeah, I love this. And this goes right along with kind of what we've been talking to our community about is, you know, because a lot of these women haven't been working. So they not only haven't been necessarily utilizing the technology in this way, but they also are trying to show that they're relevant too. And this is part of that piece. But the other piece is to practice, you practice with a friend, call your sister, like over and over again, and have them give feedback and do mock interviews on this video, you know, put some work in, prepare, like all of that. It sounds like you would recommend that as well. Because at this point, people are less forgiving, I think is
right.
Like,
we're sophomores or juniors heading towards the whatever. Right.
Absolutely.
Remember too that this is a show me medium. This is a visual medium. How do we use that part of the tool? Otherwise, we're just on a phone call. How are we showing ourselves? Or if we want to, you know, how do we know how to share a screen within this program? Or that kind of a thing, and you know, do some show and tell, and do some visual explaining of things if you need to, and that's the medium we're in. So you know, remember that.
And there is a little bit of smoke and mirrors too. You know, this kind of started because that is my reality. You know, I'm not all that interested in, and that's actually cleaned up. So you know, get creative. Get creative with what you think is an appropriate space, you know, whether it's, I would almost rather see someone kind of in a space that maybe is feels a little awkward, but they don't use one of those faux Zoom backgrounds, the faux green screen, because the lighting is just not going to be right. And you get that little fuzzy, and especially if you do one, Sarah, that it's like, I'm floating in outer space, or
this kind of stuff, you know, you're probably not in San Francisco and I don't want to pull up my head, and you know.
It's okay for internal team meetings or people you talk to all the time, but you're in an interview, that's again just distracting. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, if it's something that you want to be fun and playful with, if that's what you're doing, and even what Dave did, just going through those things, but also they all really look good because he's got a really well lit green screen. So
Right. But I think your guidance is spot on, that we're in our sophomore or junior year of video conferencing and
of writing that video letter.
Write that video letter. I love that. I think that's so on point. Great. Cherylynne and Dave, thank you so much for coming to us from StorySeller Media. And we are really looking forward to your offerings as you roll these out in the new year.
Great. Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks.
And thanks viewers.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.